Hello friends, today we are going to read the second chapter from the book First Flight. The name of the chapter is Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. This is an extract taken from his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. Let's start with before you read. Apartheid is a political system that separates people according to their race. Can you say which of the three countries named below had such a political system until very recently? Obviously, the answer is South Africa. So apartheid is a kind of a type of a political system that separates people according to their race. And in South Africa, until its independence, there was a system prevalent where people were separated according to their race. And that system was called apartheid. Have you heard of Nelson Mandela? Who was Mandela? Mandela and his African National Congress spent a lifetime fighting against apartheid. Mandela had to spend 30 years in prison. Finally, democratic elections were held in South Africa in 1994, and Mandela became the first black president of a new nation. Mandela fought for South Africa's freedom. He spent many years in prison, and he was one of the most prominent leaders of African National Congress Party. In 1994, when South Africa became fully democratic country, Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. In this extract from his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela speaks about a historic occasion, the inauguration. Can you guess what the occasion might be? So, this extract has been taken from Mandela's autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. And here, Mandela talks about the historic occasion of the inauguration of the first democratic government, non-racial government of South Africa on 10th May 1994. So here starts our lesson of our chapter. This is an extract taken from Mandela's autobiography. So the narrator, the speaker in this chapter is Nelson Mandela. He is telling us his story in his own words, and here he is talking about the historic occasion of the installation of the first non-racial democratic government of South Africa. 10th May dawned bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. These are the opening lines of this chapter, and here Mandela mentions about the 10th May when the opening ceremony, the installation of the South Africa's first non-racial government was taking place in South Africa. On this historic occasion, many dignitaries, important leaders of world gathered there to pay their respects before the inauguration. That was the largest gatherings ever of international leaders on South African soil. Besieged by means to be surrounded closely by. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheater formed by the Union buildings in Pretoria. For decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was the site of rainbow gatherings of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheater formed by the Union buildings in Pretoria. Pretoria is the name of the city of South Africa. It was taking place in a lovely amphitheater. For decades, this amphitheater was the seat of white supremacy. Seat of white supremacy means here, for many decades, for many centuries, white people ruled over South Africa from these buildings, from these offices. South Africa was ruled for more than 300 years by the whites, and these buildings, the sandstone amphitheater, was the symbol of white supremacy for more than 300 years. And now in this sandstone amphitheater, South Africa's first democratic government was taking oath in the able leadership of Nelson Mandela. And now it was the site of gatherings of different colors and nations. Different colors and nations means people, important leaders of different countries gathered there to witness this historic occasion. On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter, Janini. On the podium, Mr. de Klerk was first sworn in as second deputy president. So on that beautiful autumn day, Mr. Mandela was accompanied by his daughter, Janini. On the podium, on the stage, Mr. de Klerk was first sworn in as the second deputy president. Just like in India, we have vice president. Similarly, in South Africa, there is custom of 2 deputy presidents. So, Mr. de Klerk was first sworn in as the second deputy president. Then, Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the Constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the Republic and its people. To the assembled guests and the watching world, I said, so first of all, Mr. de Klerk was sworn in as the second deputy president. Then Mr. Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president. And in the end, Mr. Mandela was sworn in as the first black president of South Africa. And he pledged to obey and uphold the constitutions. Mr. Mandela pledged to obey and uphold the Constitution of South Africa. He pledged that he would devote his life to the well-being of the Republic and for the well-being of the people of South Africa. To the assembled guests, the people who gathered there on this historic occasion and who were watching this ceremony, he delivered his speech. Mr. Mandela delivered his speech, and he said, "Today all of us by our presence here confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud." Confer means share, give. So Mr. Mandela addressed the guests and says, today all of us are present here to give glory and hope to this newborn liberty. This liberty, this freedom of South Africa is new. And he says that out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster means people of South Africa suffered for long under the brutal hands of whites for more than 300 years, and now South Africa has become a republic. And he says all the humanity should be proud of this achievement of South Africa. We who were outlaws not so long ago have today been given the rare privilege to be the host to the nations of the world on our own soil. Mandela says that we were outlaws. We were outlaws means the black people were outlaws only few years ago. They had not any power in South Africa. They were treated like slaves in their own country. And on this historic occasion of the liberty of South Africa, they were given privilege to be the host. The blacks were given the privilege to be the host to the nations of the world. All the important leaders are gathered on this historic occasion. We thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possessions with the people of our country for what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. And Mandela thanks all the leaders for having come to South Africa on this historical occasion to witness this historical moment. He says that this is not the victory of only the South African people, but this is the common victory for all, common victory for justice, common victory for peace, and common victory for human dignity, human respect. Everybody who loves justice, everybody who loves peace, and everybody who loves human dignity or human respect, this is the victory for them. This is not just the victory for the blacks of South Africa. This is the victory for all those people in the world who love justice, peace, and human dignity, who want human beings to live in a peaceful atmosphere. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. Emancipation means freedom from restrictions which were put on them by the whites. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. Deprivation means state of not having one's rightful benefits. That means a human being who doesn't have his rightful benefits, right to education, right to live, right to job, etc. Mandela says that we pledge that we will liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty. We will free ourselves, we will free our people from the bondages of poverty, from the bondages of deprivation, from the bondages of suffering, and gender and other kind of discrimination. Discrimination means being treated differently or unfavorably. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. And Mandela further says that this beautiful land will never witness again the oppression of one people by another. That means from now onwards, nobody in South Africa will discriminate among the people on the basis of the color of their skin, or on the basis of their race, or on the basis of their caste or creed. He says, the sun shall never set on this glorious land of South Africa. And he says, let freedom reign, let freedom always rules on South African soil. God bless Africa. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters and troops carriers rolled in perfect formation over the Union buildings. Now, Mandela mentions about how the South African jets, helicopters and troop carriers rolled in the sky over the Union buildings where the ceremony was taking place. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. Performance of South African jets, helicopters and troop carriers in the sky was taking place over the Union buildings. It was a display of pinpoint precision, and it was a display of military force of South Africa. It also showed the military's loyalty to the first democratic government of South Africa. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. Mandela says that only a few moments ago, the generals of the South African Army and police saluted him because he was sworn in as the first black president of South Africa. And these generals' chests were bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by. All these generals pledged their loyalty towards Mandela and his government. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before, they would not have saluted but arrested me. Mandela mentions how only a few years back, these same generals were ready to arrest him, because at that time South Africa was ruled by whites. It was not an independent country, it was not a republic country, it was ruled by whites at that time. And at that time they were ever ready to arrest Mr. Mandela because he was taking part in the freedom struggle for South Africa. But now, that day, on the installation of the first democratic government, these same generals and the police officers were saluting Mr. Mandela. The situations, the conditions, the whole thing have changed now. Mr. Mandela has sworn in as the first black president, and these generals are saluting him and pledging their loyalty towards the democratic government. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue and gold of the new South African flag. So the jets are continuing to perform in the sky, and some jets are leaving behind them a smoke trail of black, red, green, blue and gold, which are the colors of the new South African flag. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems. So on this historical occasion, two national anthems were sung. and the vision of whites singing Nikosi Sekali, I Africa, and blacks singing Die Stem, the old anthem of the Republic. So on this historic occasion, two national anthems were sung. First that was sung by whites, and they were singing Nikosi Sekal, I Africa. And the blacks were singing Die Stem, that was the old anthem of the Republic. Although that they neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem, they once despised means had a very low opinion of something or somebody. Earlier, one of this national anthem was despised by the whites, while the other was despised by the blacks. But now they were singing each other's national anthems. The whites were singing Nikosi Sikal I Africa, while the blacks were singing Die Stem. Although they did not know the lyrics of these anthems, but they would soon know the words by heart. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned people of their own land. So on the day of the inauguration, Mandela was overwhelmed with a sense of history. He was thinking about history of South Africa, and he is thinking about how in the first decade of the 20th century, a few years before the Anglo-Boer War, a war that was fought between the two foreign powers, even before Mandela's birth, the white-skinned people of South Africa, who were not the inhabitants of the South Africa, they all came from Europe, first as travelers and then gradually became the rulers of South Africa. And in the first decade of the 20th century, all these white people of South Africa patched up their differences and erected means formed a system of racial domination, against the dark-skinned people of their own land. The original inhabitant of the South Africa were black-skinned people, and these white people formed a system of discrimination against the inhabitants of South Africa. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies the world has ever known. And the structure, that kind of government they formed, the kind of rule, the kind of structure they developed became the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies of the world that has ever known to the human society. The system was formed to discriminate against the blacks, the Negroes of South Africa. This was the domination of white people on the black people. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century and my own 8th decade as a man, and Mandela says that in the last decade of the 20th century and now, when he himself in his 8th decade as a man, that means he is more than 80 years of age, that system had been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedoms of all peoples regardless of the color of their skin. And Mandela says that in the last decade of the 20th century, that means in the 1990s, this system of racial supremacy that was formed by the white-skinned people, that has been overturned forever, and it has been replaced by the new system. And this new system recognized the rights of everybody. This new system recognized the rights of white as well as blacks. This new system recognized the rights of blacks as well as the colored as well as the white people of the South Africa. The system recognized the freedom of all people of South Africa, regardless of what is the color of their skin, whether they are white, whether they are colored, or whether they are blacks. Everybody has the freedom. People are no longer discriminated on the basis of the color of their skin. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people. People whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. Mandela says that this day has come because of the sacrifices of the thousands and lakhs of people of South Africa. Thousands and lakhs of people have sacrificed their life for the freedom of South Africa, and their suffering and courage cannot be counted or repaid. I felt that day, as I have on many others day, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. And Mandela says that he has become the first black president of South Africa because so many people sacrificed their life. So many people sacrificed their lives for the sake of the freedom. Even before him, many people attended the freedom struggle of South Africa and sacrificed their lives. And South Africa that has witnessed this day only because of the sacrifice of all these people. He says that if these people had not sacrificed their lives, then it would have been very difficult to liberate South Africa from the hands of the whites. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. He says that long and noble line of freedom fighters had gone before me. They are already died before South Africa gained freedom. And this line has again started with him now. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. Wrought means done or achieved. Mandela says that many people who sacrificed their life, they are gone now, they are now not alive, but their sacrifices cannot be forgotten. They will always be remembered in the history of South Africa as the first freedom fighters of South Africa who sacrifices and wrought means who brought the freedom for South Africa, who achieved, who took part in the freedom struggle for South Africa and played their part in the freedom of South Africa. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. Mandela says that this policy of apartheid created a deep and a lasting wound, a kind of a wound that will last forever. People will not forget this wound for many, many years. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. Profound means deep and strong. Mandela says that people suffered for very long because this kind of discrimination, this system of apartheid was prevalent in South Africa for hundreds of years, for more than 300 years. And people will not forget all the trouble, all the brutality and oppression at the hands of the white. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Tambo's, the Walter Sislus, the Chief Luthulis, the Yusuf Dadus, the Bram Fissers, the Robert subquays of our time. Mandela says that this freedom struggle has given South Africa many people of great character. People like Oliver Tambo and Walter Sisulu will never be forgotten. Their names have become immortal in the history of South Africa. In the annals of South Africa, their names have become immortal. They will forever be remembered for their contribution in the freedom struggle of South Africa. Men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom and generosity that their like may never be known again. Mandela says that all these men, all these people were the people of great courage, great wisdom and generosity, that such a people, that the people like them may never be known again to the human society, to the human beings. Perhaps it requires such depths of operation to create such heights of character. He believes that in difficult situations, in difficult circumstances, people of high character, people of rich character evolves with times. My country is rich in minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. South Africa is very rich in minerals and diamonds, but Mr. Mandela says that he always believed that the true minerals, the true gems, the true diamonds of South Africa are its people. It is not the minerals and gems which lies beneath its soil, but the people who lives on the soil, on the earth. They are the real gems, they are the real diamonds of South Africa. He believes it. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. And Mandela says that he has learned the meaning of courage from these yesteryear's freedom fighters. He learned what is the meaning of courage age. Time and again I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. Mandela says that time and again he has seen how people sacrifice their life for the sake of idea, for the sake of the idea of freedom of their country. For the freedom of their country, how people of South Africa, how the black people, the colored people of South Africa sacrifice their life for the idea of independence, to liberate themselves from the shackles of discrimination. He mentions how men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, how they stood up to all the tortures of whites without breaking physically or mentally. Even if they were broken physically, but they were so strong mentally that they never gave up. They always stood their ground and sacrificed their life for the freedom of South Africa. He says this is beyond imagination, this defies the imagination, because we cannot imagine how strong those people were mentally, how tough those people were. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the trump over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. It means that everybody feel fear, but when you trump over that fear, that means courage. You have won over the fear. He believes that the brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, But that person who conquers his fear, who has been able to win over his fears, that is the definition of courage according to Mr. Mandela. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. Mandela says that nobody in this world is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background. When a child is born, he never hates anybody. He doesn't hate anybody because of the color of anybody's skin or of what background the person is. Whether he is rich or poor, whether he is a person of black or white skin or any background, when the child is born, he doesn't hate anybody. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. And Mandela says that people learn to hate with age. As they become older, they learn to hate each other. And he says that if people can learn to hate each other while they grow up, they can also be taught to love each other. Because he says love comes more naturally to human heart than hate. Even in the grimmest times means the most difficult times. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of hope. I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, perhaps just for a second. And Mandela says that even in the most difficult times, when he and his fellow freedom fighters were pushed to the limits, were tortured brutally by the white people in the prisons, even in those difficult times, they would see some sense of humanity in the guards, even for a second also, even for only for few moments, they could see some human quality in those guards also, who were there only to torture them, only to punish them. But even in those guards also, sometimes, maybe only for few seconds or few moments, he could see some human quality, some good quality. But it was enough to reassure me and keep me going. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. And Mandela says that everybody possesses some good quality. Everybody possesses some goodness in his or her heart. And this goodness, this man's goodness, is a kind of a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. You can hide this goodness for some time, but it cannot be extinguished. Someday it will be seen and there will be light everywhere. There will be freedom everywhere. There will be no discrimination of people by anybody on the basis of their color or race. This is the first part of the explanation of this lesson, Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. I will explain the remaining part of this chapter in the second part. Thank you for watching.